The blade caught the fluorescent glow from the convenience store sign, a quick, vicious arc cutting through the cold October night. Claire Donovan felt the steel punch through her left forearm, felt the hot bloom of blood soak into her scrubs, but her right hand never left the kid's neck. He was maybe 22, marine dress blues soaked dark at the collar, eyes rolling back as his pulse flickered under her fingers. She'd seen that look before. Kandahar, Helmand, places that didn't exist on her nursing resume. The second man circled left, switchblade low and ready, and Claire shifted her weight without thinking, angling her body to keep the Marine behind her. Not panic, not heroics, pure calculation, the kind of muscle memory that doesn't fade just because you trade fatigues for scrubs. The man lunged again. She took the hit in the shoulder this time, gasping as the point scraped bone, and someone screamed from the parking lot. But Claire didn't move. Couldn't. Wouldn't. Because 7 years ago she'd made a promise in a desert half a world away, and some promises don't have an expiration date. If you want to see how this night ends, how a woman they thought was nobody became the one person they couldn't break, stay with me until the final word. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit subscribe. You're going to want to see what happens when they realize who they just tried to kill. The shift had run 4 hours over. Again. Claire Donovan peeled off her gloves in the Northvale General Nurse Station, every joint in her body registering a formal complaint. 31 years old, and her knees felt 50. She'd spent the last 6 hours running codes, chasing meds, and trying to explain to a family why their father wasn't going to make it through the night. The attending had delivered the news like he was reading a grocery list. Claire had stayed behind, held the daughter's hand, let the woman scream and cry and break down without judgment. That part didn't show up in the job description, but it was the part that mattered. She clocked out at 11:47. The hospital cafeteria was closed, vending machines empty except for stale pretzels. Her stomach growled in protest, but she ignored it. The Brook Hollow apartment she rented was 20 minutes away if traffic cooperated, which it never did in Ashbury City. She just wanted her couch, her cat, and 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. The parking garage smelled like oil and exhaust. Her Honda sat under a flickering light in Section D, right where she'd left it that morning. Claire dug for her keys, found them tangled with a stethoscope and 3 pens that had somehow migrated from her pocket. She was halfway to the car when her phone buzzed. A text from Jamie, one of the ER nurses. "You get home safe. Text me." Heard there was something going down near the 7th Street exit. Claire frowned. The 7th Street exit was her route. She typed back a quick thumbs up and kept walking. Ashbury had its rough patches, what city didn't, but she'd lived here 5 years and never had a problem. Besides, she was too tired to reroute. Traffic was light. She made it through 2 green lights before hitting construction on Riverside Avenue, which added 10 minutes of detour through side streets she didn't usually take. The GPS rerouted her past a strip of businesses she vaguely recognized. A laundromat, a check cashing place, a convenience store with bars on the windows. Not dangerous exactly, just worn down. The kind of neighborhood that got forgotten in city council meetings. She was stopped at a red light, half listening to a true crime podcast, when movement in her peripheral vision made her look up. A man stumbled out from between 2 buildings, one hand pressed against his side. Even from across the intersection, Claire could see the dark stain spreading across his uniform. Marine dress blues. The kid couldn't have been more than 25, and he was going down fast. The light turned green. The car behind her honked. Claire didn't move. She watched the Marine take 2 more steps and collapse against a parked car, sliding down to the pavement. No one else on the street reacted. A couple walking past looked, then kept walking. A guy smoking outside the laundromat turned away. "Damn it," Claire muttered. She yanked the wheel right, cutting into a parking spot so abruptly the driver behind her laid on the horn. She didn't care. She was already out of the car, grabbing the trauma kit she kept in her trunk, a habit from her army days that most people thought was paranoid, but she'd never broken. The Marine was conscious but fading. Up close she could see he was younger than she'd thought, baby-faced, freckles, the kind of kid who probably still got carded. His name tape read, "Hale." Blood seeped between his fingers where he clutched his side, and his breathing came in short, shallow gasps. "Hey!" Claire dropped to her knees beside him, hands already moving. "I'm a nurse. Let me see." He tried to pull away. No, don't. Not a debate, Marine. She pried his hand away and lifted his jacket. Stab wound, lower left quadrant, deep. She pressed gauze against it, hard. What happened? They, he coughed, blood flecking his lips. They followed me from, save it. Just breathe. Claire pulled out her phone with her free hand, dialing 911. She gave the dispatcher the address, kept her voice calm and clear even as Hale's pulse jumped erratically under her other hand. Stab wound to the abdomen, probable internal bleeding, patient is conscious but deteriorating. I need an ambulance now. The dispatcher said something about 7 minutes. 7 minutes was a lifetime. Hale grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. They're still here. Claire looked up. That's when she saw them. 2 men, maybe 30 yards away, standing under the broken streetlight near the convenience store. Watching. Not moving, not talking, just watching. Her stomach dropped. She'd seen that posture before. Patient, purposeful, predatory. Not random violence, not a mugging gone wrong. This was something else. Who are they? She asked quietly, not taking her eyes off the men. I don't... Hale's breath hitched. I reported something. Weapons. Supply chain. They've been tracking me. One of the men started walking toward them. Claire's heart rate spiked, but her hands stayed steady. She shifted position slightly, putting herself between Hale and the approaching man. The move was automatic, instinctive, drilled into her during combat lifesaver training in a desert that felt like a different lifetime. Ma'am! The man stopped about 10 feet away. Mid-30s, leather jacket, dead eyes. You should go. I'm good here, Claire said evenly. That wasn't a suggestion. Wasn't asking for one. The second man circled around, flanking left. Claire tracked him without turning her head. 2 threats. 1 injured Marine, no backup yet. The math wasn't great. Leather jacket took a step closer. Last chance. Walk away. Claire looked up at him, her hand still pressed against Hale's wound. Not happening. Something shifted in the man's expression. Recognition, maybe. Or just irritation. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. Nothing fancy, just a 4-inch folding blade, the kind you could buy at any hardware store. Your funeral, he said. He moved fast. Not wild, not angry. Controlled. Professional. Claire saw the blade coming and made a choice in the half-second she had. She could dodge, let him get to Hale, or she could hold position. She held. The knife caught her left forearm as she raised it instinctively, cutting through scrubs and skin in one clean motion. Pain exploded up her arm, but she didn't scream, didn't move, just absorbed the hit and stayed between the attacker and her patient. Leather jacket pulled back, surprised. The hell is wrong with you? Claire didn't answer. Blood ran down her arm, hot and sticky, dripping onto the pavement. She adjusted her stance, feet shoulder width, knees bent, weight centered. The position felt familiar in a way that nursing never did. The second man came in from the side. Claire saw him too late. His blade caught her right shoulder, a glancing blow that tore through muscle and scraped against bone. This time she did gasp, her vision whiting out for a second before training kicked back in. Pain was just information. Process it later. Stop. Hale tried to sit up, his voice weak. Leave her. Stay down, Claire snapped. She kept her eyes on the 2 men who had both backed off a few steps. They were talking now, low and urgent, but she couldn't make out the words. Didn't matter. They weren't leaving, and neither was she. Sirens rose in the distance, still too far. Leather jacket looked toward the sound, then back at Claire. You're crazy. You know that? So I've heard. He came at her again, this time aiming low. Claire shifted, took the blade in her side, felt it slide between ribs, felt her lung protest as air leaked into places it wasn't supposed to go. Her legs buckled, but she caught herself on the car, one hand still clamped over Hale's wound. The second man hesitated. Dude, she's not going down. I can see that. They hit her twice more in the next 15 seconds. Claire lost count of where. Her left thigh. Her back, maybe. Everything was starting to blur together, pain and adrenaline mixing into something sharp and electric. She was dimly aware of people gathering now, phones out, recording, nobody intervening. Typical. The sirens were louder now, close. Leather jacket swore and stepped back. We're done. Both men turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of alleys behind the strip mall. Claire's legs gave out. She slumped against the car, her hand finally slipping from Hale's wound. Blood everywhere, hers, his. Impossible to tell which was which. Her breathing came in short, ragged gasps, the collapsed lung making itself known. "You're—" Hale was staring at her, eyes wide. "You're insane." "Probably," Claire wheezed. Her vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. "But you're alive." "The way you moved," he coughed. "That wasn't— You've done this before." Claire tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Her training was screaming at her to assess, to triage, to stop the bleeding, but her body wasn't cooperating anymore. She could hear the ambulance now, tires screeching as it pulled up, voices shouting, hands on her shoulders, easing her down. A paramedic's face swam into view, young guy, scared eyes. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" "The Marine," Claire managed. "Check him first." "We've got him. Just stay with me, okay?" But she was already slipping. The last thing she registered before everything went black was someone in the crowd, voice shaking with disbelief. "She fought like she's done this before." Gun. Claire woke up to the sound of machines beeping and the smell of antiseptic. For one disorienting second, she was back in the field hospital outside Kandahar, waking up after a mortar attack that had taken out half their compound. Then the fog cleared, and she remembered. Ashbury. The Marine. The knives. Her body felt like one giant bruise. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain flared across her torso, sharp enough to make her gasp. "Easy." A nurse appeared at her bedside, not anyone Claire recognized, which probably meant she was in ICU. "You're at Northvale. You've been out for about 6 hours. Claire's mouth was dry as sand. "The Marine. Hale. Is he— He made it. He's in recovery, stable." The nurse adjusted her IV line. "You probably saved his life." "Probably." The nurse gave her a look. "Definitely. But you almost died doing it. 7 stab wounds, collapsed lung, fractured ribs, severe blood loss. You coded once in the ambulance. We had to give you 4 units. 7. Claire processed that. She remembered 4 hits, maybe 5. The rest must have landed while she was too far gone to register them. "Who brought me in?" she asked. "Paramedics. But there's about a dozen people outside waiting to see you. Police, military officials, hospital administration. There's also a reporter from Channel 6, but we told her to get lost." Military officials. That was unexpected. Claire must have looked confused because the nurse continued. "The Marine you saved, Corporal Hale, he's been talking. A lot. To anyone who'll listen. Says you're a hero." "I'm a nurse." "You're both, apparently." Before Claire could respond, the door opened. A man in army dress uniform stepped in, colonel's eagles on his shoulders, ribbons Claire could read even from across the room. Combat infantryman badge, bronze star. This wasn't some desk officer paying a courtesy visit. "Ms. Donovan." He had a deep voice, measured and calm. "I'm Colonel Reeves. Do you feel up to talking?" Claire nodded slowly. Reeves pulled up a chair, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd spent decades in the service. "Corporal Hale has been very forthcoming about what happened last night. He says you positioned yourself between him and his attackers, took multiple stab wounds without retreating, maintained pressure on his wound even while being actively assaulted." He paused. "That's not civilian behavior, Ms. Donovan." Claire said nothing. "So I pulled your file." Reeves leaned back. "Army, 2015 to 2019. Combat medic, 10th Mountain Division. Deployed twice, Afghanistan, then Iraq. Honorable discharge. Silver Star for actions during an ambush outside Kandahar where you treated 6 wounded soldiers while under direct fire." He met her eyes. "You didn't hesitate last night because you were brave. You didn't hesitate because that's what you were trained to do." "I'm not in the Army anymore," Claire said quietly. "No. But you recognized a combat situation instantly and chose to re-enter it as a civilian. That takes a different kind of courage." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a challenge coin, simple brass, worn smooth from handling. He placed it on the table beside her bed. "Corporal Hale is alive because of you, and because you held that position long enough for help to arrive, his attackers were spotted fleeing the scene. Security cameras caught their faces. We know who they are now." Claire stared at the coin. Why was he targeted? Reeves' expression darkened. Hale reported irregularities in a weapons supply contract 6 months ago. Equipment going missing, serial numbers altered, paperwork that didn't add up. He thought he was just flagging administrative errors. Turns out he'd stumbled onto a trafficking ring, ex-military contractors stealing weapons and selling them to the highest bidder. They tried to scare him quiet. When that didn't work, they escalated. They tried to kill him. Yes, and they almost succeeded. Reeves stood. But they didn't count on running into someone like you. After he left, Claire lay in the quiet ICU room and tried to process it all. She'd left the Army 3 years ago, burned out and broken in ways that didn't show on X-rays. She'd thought she was done with that life, done with violence and sacrifice and carrying the weight of other people's survival. Turned out some things didn't let you go that easily. Her phone was on the side table, cracked screen but still functional. 17 missed calls, 43 texts. She scrolled through them, coworkers, friends, her mother in Ohio who somehow already knew what happened, and one from a number she didn't recognize. This is Marcus Hale. Thank you doesn't even start to cover it. I owe you my life. Claire closed her eyes. Her body hurt. Her career was probably about to get complicated. And somewhere out there, 2 men who'd tried to kill a Marine and a nurse were probably looking over their shoulders, wondering how badly they'd just screwed up. She thought about deleting the text, about pretending this was just a freak occurrence, bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Instead, she typed back, "Just doing my job. Glad you made it." Then she set the phone down and waited for whatever came next. The first video hit social media 4 hours after she woke up. Someone had been filming from across the street. Shaky footage, poor lighting, but clear enough to see what mattered. Claire on her knees beside Hale, the first man approaching with the knife. The way she shifted position, putting herself between the blade and the Marine. The hit to her arm, then her shoulder, then her side. And through it all, she didn't move, didn't run, didn't even try to defend herself beyond raising an arm to deflect the worst of it. The caption read, "Nurse takes 7 stab wounds protecting wounded Marine." Who is this woman? By the time Claire saw it, the video had been shared 8,000 times. By the next morning, it was national news. Detective Sarah Ortiz from Ashbury PD showed up at noon with a tablet and a grim expression. "Ms. Donovan, I need to show you something." She pulled up the video. Claire watched herself get stabbed on repeat from 3 different angles. Apparently half the block had been recording. It was strange seeing it from the outside. She looked smaller than she felt, more fragile, but the positioning was unmistakable. Every shift, every movement calculated to keep herself between the attackers and Hale. "We've identified both suspects," Ortiz said. "Vincent Carver and Josh Maddox, ex-Marines dishonorably discharged 2 years ago. They've been linked to the trafficking ring Corporal Hale exposed. We picked up Carver this morning at a motel outside the city. Maddox is still in the wind, but we'll find him." "Good," Claire said. "The footage is pretty damning. We've got them on camera committing attempted murder. Federal prosecutors are already building a case. This ties into the larger investigation into the weapons trafficking. You're going to be a witness." Claire had figured as much. "Whatever you need." Ortiz hesitated. "For what it's worth, what you did was remarkable. Stupid maybe, but remarkable." "I get that a lot." After the detective left, the hospital administrator came by. A nervous man named Peterson who kept adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Donovan, we want you to know that you have the full support of Northvale General. We're incredibly proud of your actions. The media is requesting interviews, and we think—" "No interviews," Claire cut him off. "But—" I said no. Peterson looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Claire's expression stopped him. "Of course, whatever you're comfortable with." But the story was already out there, spreading faster than she could control. News vans parked outside the hospital. Reporters calling her phone non-stop until she blocked every unknown number. Someone dug up her military records and published them online. Her Silver Star citation, photos of her in uniform, quotes from soldiers she'd served with. One article called her the Angel of Ashbury. Claire deleted the app and threw her phone across the room. Marcus Hale came to see her on day 3. He moved carefully, one hand pressed to his side, but he was upright and steady. That was something. They told me you didn't want visitors, he said from the doorway. But I had to try. Claire waved him in. You're not press, so you're fine. He sat down in the visitor chair, and for a minute neither of them spoke. The machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. I keep watching the video, Marcus said finally, trying to understand why you did it, why you didn't just run. Would you have run? I'm a Marine. I signed up for this. So did I, Claire said. A long time ago. Marcus studied her. Colonel Reeves told me about Kandahar, the ambush, 6 soldiers. 7? Claire corrected quietly. 1 didn't make it. But 6 did, because of you. She didn't respond. The guys who came after me, Marcus continued, they're part of something bigger, the trafficking ring. It goes deeper than anyone thought. Military weapons ending up in the hands of gangs, cartels, even foreign buyers. I stumbled onto it by accident, just noticed some inventory didn't match up. Started asking questions. Next thing I know, I'm getting followed, threatened. They told me to shut up or they'd make me. You didn't shut up. No. He smiled grimly. Apparently I'm stubborn. Apparently. The point is, you didn't just save me. You gave investigators time to ID the attackers, which led them to the distribution network, which is about to bring down the whole operation. Federal agents have been making arrests all week. 23 people so far, with more coming. Claire hadn't known that. She'd been avoiding the news, avoiding everything. They're calling you a hero, Marcus said. I'm not. Yeah, you are. You just don't want to be. He pulled something from his pocket. A patch, faded and worn. 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. He set it on her bedside table next to Colonel Reeves' challenge coin. That's my unit patch, he said. I want you to have it. So you remember that what you did mattered, that it meant something. After he left, Claire stared at the patch for a long time. She thought about Kandahar, about the weight of a rifle and the sound of mortars, and the way blood looked in desert sand. She'd left that world behind because it was breaking her, piece by piece, until she wasn't sure there'd be anything left to save. But maybe some things didn't break. Maybe they just changed shape. A week later, Josh Maddox was arrested at a truck stop in Nevada. He'd been trying to cross into Mexico with fake papers and a duffel bag full of cash. The footage of his arrest showed him being dragged out of a semi-cab, hands cuffed behind his back, face pressed against the hood, while federal agents read him his rights. Detective Ortiz called Claire personally to tell her. We got him. Both suspects in custody, and the trafficking case is solid. Weapons, money laundering, conspiracy. They're looking at life without parole. Good, Claire said again. It was becoming her default response. There's something else, Ortiz continued. Vincent Carver is talking, trying to cut a deal. He's giving up names, locations, the whole network. Because of you holding that line, we're dismantling an operation that's been running for at least 5 years. This is bigger than Ashbury. This is national. Claire let that sink in. She just wanted to save one kid, one bleeding Marine on a dark street. She hadn't thought about investigations or networks or federal cases. She'd just seen someone who needed help and made a choice. Ms. Donovan? Ortiz's voice pulled her back. You still there? Yeah, I'm here. You should be proud. Pride wasn't the word Claire would use. Relief, maybe. Or just exhaustion. But she thanked the detective and hung up. The hospital discharged her 2 days later. She went home to her quiet apartment in Brook Hollow, where her cat, a gray tabby named Murphy, meowed indignantly at her absence. She fed him, showered carefully around her stitches, and sat on her couch staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed. Another message from a number she didn't know. This is Lieutenant Commander Angela Torres, Navy JAG. I'm working with the prosecution team on the Carver/Maddox case. We'd like to discuss your testimony. Can you call me at your earliest convenience? Claire set the phone down without responding. She'd call tomorrow, or the next day. Right now, she just needed to sit in her own space and breathe air that didn't smell like disinfectant. But the quiet didn't last long. At sunrise the next morning, Claire woke to the sound of engines outside her building. Multiple vehicles. Heavy. She looked out her window and froze. The entire street was filled with military personnel. Army, Marines, Navy. Rows and rows of them in dress uniform, standing at attention in the pale morning light. Maybe 200 people, maybe more, all silent and still. Claire stumbled downstairs in sweatpants and a t-shirt, barefoot on the cold pavement, and pushed through her building's front door. Every single soldier snapped into salute. The sound of 200 hands hitting 200 chests in perfect unison echoed through the empty street. Claire stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face without permission, unable to process what she was seeing. A senior officer stepped forward. General Martinez, 3 stars, face weathered by decades of service. He saluted her. "Ms. Donovan," he said, voice carrying in the still air, "you may have taken off the uniform, but you never stopped being one of us." Claire tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She returned the salute, sloppy, unpracticed, but genuine. The general lowered his hand. "These men and women heard what you did. They wanted you to know you're not forgotten, that what you did in Kandahar and what you did on that street in Ashbury, it matters. You matter." Someone in the ranks started clapping, then another, then all of them, applause rolling through the formation like thunder. Claire broke, just completely broke, sobbing in front of 200 soldiers who'd shown up at dawn to tell her she wasn't alone. When she finally composed herself enough to look up, General Martinez was holding something, a wooden case, polished and formal. "The President of the United States has authorized the awarding of the Citizens Medal for Valor," he said. "For conspicuous courage in the face of extreme danger, at great personal risk, in service to a fellow citizen and to your country." He opened the case. Inside, a medal gleamed in the early light. Claire stared at it. I was just a nurse doing—" "You were a soldier," Martinez said quietly, "and you always will be." The ceremony lasted 15 minutes. Then the soldiers dispersed as quietly as they'd arrived, engines rumbling to life in the early morning cold. Claire stood on the sidewalk holding the wooden case, watching taillights disappear around the corner. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watched from her window across the street, phone pressed to her ear, probably telling someone what she'd just witnessed. By noon, it would be all over the neighborhood. By evening, probably all over the city again. Claire went back inside. Murphy wound around her ankles, demanding breakfast. She fed him, made coffee she didn't drink, and sat at her kitchen table staring at the medal. The medal was cold and heavy in her hand. Official, real. She'd spent 3 years trying to leave the army behind, trying to build something normal and quiet, and hers. Now the past had caught up in the worst possible way, not through nightmares or flashbacks, but through recognition she hadn't asked for and didn't know how to carry. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Then another, and another. By the time she silenced the ringer, she had 12 missed calls. She opened her laptop instead, typed her name into the search bar, and immediately regretted it. The video had gone viral, 20 million views across platforms. News sites had picked it up, commentary channels, military blogs. Someone had made a TikTok compilation set to dramatic music. The comments ranged from supportive to skeptical to outright hostile. Staged. No way someone takes 7 stab wounds and lives. Why didn't she fight back? She just stood there like an idiot. Former combat medic equals propaganda. Military using this for recruitment. This woman is a hero, and anyone saying otherwise can sit down. Claire closed the laptop. She didn't need strangers debating her choices. She'd made them. They were done. But the knock on her door 20 minutes later told her nothing was done. She checked the peephole. A woman in her 40s, professional suit, press credentials hanging from her neck. Claire didn't open the door. "Ms. Donovan, I'm Rebecca Holt from the Washington Post. I'd love to talk to you about—" "Not interested," Claire called through the door. "Just 5 minutes? Your story is important. My story is mine. Have a good day." Silence. Then footsteps retreating down the hall. Claire waited by the door for another minute, then went back to the kitchen. She needed to eat something, needed to figure out when she could return to work, needed to stop feeling like her life had been hijacked by something she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a number she recognized. Northvale General's main line. "Claire Donovan," she answered. "Claire, it's Margaret." Margaret Chen was the nursing director, Claire's direct supervisor. Her voice sounded tight. "Can you come in today? We need to talk." "I'm still on medical leave." "I know. This isn't about your duties. It's about your employment." Claire's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "Just come in, please. 2 o'clock?" The line went dead before Claire could respond. She arrived at Northvale at 1:45, parking in the employee lot she'd used for 5 years. The hospital looked the same as always, gray concrete, revolving doors, the faint smell of cafeteria food and floor cleaner. But something felt different, off. She couldn't name it until she walked through the main entrance and saw people staring, nurses, visitors, even the security guard who usually just waved her through. They watched her like she was an exhibit, something foreign that had wandered into their space. Margaret's office was on the 4th floor. Claire took the stairs, avoiding the elevator crowds. By the time she reached the administrative wing, her side was aching, the stab wound between her ribs protesting the exertion. She ignored it. Margaret was waiting with the door open. "Come in. Sit." Claire sat. The office was small, cluttered with binders and patient files, and a sad little plant that Margaret kept forgetting to water. Framed photos on the desk. Margaret's husband, her 2 daughters. Normal. Safe. "I'm going to be direct," Margaret said, not meeting Claire's eyes. "The board met this morning. They're concerned about the media attention you've brought to the hospital." "I didn't bring anything. I helped someone." "I know that, you know that, but the optics are complicated." Margaret finally looked up and Claire saw genuine regret in her face. "You're being placed on indefinite administrative leave." The words took a second to land. "You're suspending me." "Not suspending. It's a temporary measure while we assess." "Assess what? Whether saving someone's life violates hospital policy?" Margaret flinched. "The board is worried about liability. You engaged with violent criminals while off duty. You were seriously injured. If you died, Northvale could have been named in lawsuits. Your military background is raising questions about whether you're fit for civilian nursing. That's garbage and you know it." "I didn't say I agreed with them." Margaret's voice rose, then dropped. She rubbed her temples. "Claire, I fought for you. I told them you're one of the best nurses we have, but I'm not on the board. I don't make these decisions." "So what? I just sit at home while they decide if I'm too dangerous to change IVs?" "It's paid leave. You'll keep your salary. And it's temporary. Give it a few weeks, let the media cycle die down, and I'll push for your reinstatement." Claire stood. "I don't need a few weeks. I need to work." "Claire," but she was already leaving, door swinging shut behind her. The hallway felt too bright, too narrow. She took the stairs down 2 at a time, ignoring the pain in her ribs, and pushed through the lobby without looking at anyone. She made it to her car before the anger turned into something else. Something colder. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, breathing through her teeth. She'd bled on that sidewalk, had taken 7 knives meant for someone else, and her reward was being told she was a liability. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Ms. Donovan, this is Lieutenant Commander Torres. We spoke briefly before. I understand you've had a difficult day. If you're willing, I'd like to buy you coffee and explain what happens next." Claire stared at the message. She should ignore it, should go home, lock her door, and wait for this nightmare to blow over. Instead, she typed back, "Where?" They met at a diner 2 blocks from the hospital. Torres was already in a corner booth when Claire arrived. Late 30s, navy uniform, crisp despite the humidity, a folder on the table in front of her. She stood when Claire approached. "Thank you for coming," Torres said. "I know you've had about enough of official meetings." "You could say that." Claire slid into the booth across from her. Torres signaled the waitress, ordered 2 coffees without asking what Claire wanted. When they were alone again, she opened the folder. "I'm going to give you the situation straight. No spin," Torres said. "Vincent Carver and Josh Maddox are facing federal charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy, weapons trafficking. The case against them is solid, but the trafficking network is bigger than we initially thought. We're looking at a minimum of 40 individuals across 6 states, including active duty personnel and contractors with security clearances." "That's good, right? You got them." "We got some of them. The problem is proving the full scope of the operation. Carver's cooperating, but his testimony alone isn't enough. We need corroborating evidence, digital trails, witness statements from people who saw parts of the network in action." Torres leaned forward. "And we need you." "I already told Detective Ortiz I'd testify." "I'm not talking about testimony. I'm talking about something bigger." Torres pulled a document from the folder. "The Department of Defense is launching a formal investigation into corruption in military supply chains. It's going to take months, maybe years. We need someone who understands both the military and civilian sides. Someone who's seen combat, who knows how field operations work, who can spot irregularities that desk officers might miss. Claire's coffee arrived. She wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the heat ground her. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'd consider working as a civilian consultant for the investigative team. Contract position, 6 months initially, renewable based on need. You'd review documentation, interview witnesses, help us connect dots. The pay is significantly better than nursing, and you'd be doing something that matters. Nursing matters. I didn't mean... Torres stopped, recalibrated. You're right, but this matters differently. This is about stopping people who are using military resources to arm criminals and terrorists. People who are getting Marines like Corporal Hale killed to protect their profits. Claire took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, bitter, and overheated. She drank it anyway. Why me? She asked. Because you've already proven you can't be scared off. You took 7 stab wounds and didn't move. That kind of conviction is rare. Torres closed the folder. And because you have something most investigators don't, you have credibility. When this case goes public, and it will, the media will eat it alive. But you're not just some bureaucrat pushing papers. You're someone who bled for this. That matters to juries, to the public, to the people we're trying to put in prison. So I'm a symbol. You're a soldier who never stopped serving. There's a difference. Claire set down her cup. I need to think about it. Of course. Take 48 hours. After that, the offer expires. We're moving fast, and we need people who can keep up. Torres stood, left a business card on the table. Call me when you decide. After she left, Claire sat alone in the booth for another 20 minutes. The diner was nearly empty. Just her, an old man reading a newspaper, and a waitress wiping down tables. Through the window, she could see Northvale General rising against the skyline. 5 years she'd worked there. 5 years of double shifts and difficult patients and bureaucratic nonsense. And now they decided she was too much trouble. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus Hale. Are you okay? I heard about the hospital. News traveled fast. Claire typed back, I'm fine, just figuring things out. If you need anything, let me know. I'm serious. She appreciated that. Marcus had visited her twice more since the first time, bringing terrible hospital coffee and telling stories about his unit. He was a good kid, earnest, the kind of Marine who actually believed the recruiting posters. She left the diner and drove aimlessly for a while, no destination in mind. The city passed by in fragments, construction zones, strip malls, neighborhoods she recognized but had never really explored. Ashbury was big enough to get lost in, but small enough that you kept seeing the same faces. She'd lived here 5 years and still felt like a visitor. By the time she got home, the sun was setting. Murphy greeted her with his usual indignation. She fed him, changed into sweats, and collapsed on the couch. The business card sat on her coffee table. Lieutenant Commander Angela Torres, Navy JAG. A phone number, an email address, an offer that would upend everything she'd tried to build. She thought about Kandahar again, about the ambush that had earned her the Silver Star. She'd been 24, barely old enough to rent a car, and suddenly responsible for keeping 7 soldiers alive while insurgents fired on their position from 3 sides. She remembered the weight of the rifle in her hands, the taste of dust, the way time stretched and compressed until nothing existed except the next decision. Stop the bleeding, return fire, move to cover, repeat. She'd saved 6 that day. Lost 1, a kid from Tennessee named Walker, who'd bled out before the medevac arrived. She still saw his face sometimes when she couldn't sleep. The Army had given her a medal and told her she was a hero. But heroes didn't wake up at 3 in the morning with their hearts racing. Heroes didn't spend years avoiding fireworks and loud noises and crowds. Heroes didn't leave the service because they couldn't handle the wait anymore. Her phone rang. She almost ignored it, then saw the caller ID, her mother. Hi, Mom. Claire Elizabeth Donovan, I have been trying to reach you for 3 days. Her mother's voice was sharp with worry. I saw the video. I saw the news. Why didn't you call me? I'm fine. Really? You were stabbed 7 times. I'm aware. This isn't funny. You could have died. Her mother's voice cracked. When your father passed, you promised me you'd be careful. You promised. Claire closed her eyes. Her father had been a firefighter, killed responding to a warehouse blaze when Claire was 16. It was part of why she'd joined the army, some misguided idea about carrying on his legacy of service. Her mother had supported the decision, but never forgiven it. "I was just helping someone," Claire said quietly. "I didn't plan for any of this." "You never planned for it, it just keeps happening." A long pause. "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. Claire had forgotten about it completely. "I don't know yet. Work is complicated." "I heard you were suspended. How did you—" "It's all over the news, sweetheart. They're calling you a hero and a liability in the same breath." Her mother sighed. "Come home, stay for a week, let me feed you, and make sure you're actually okay." "I'll think about it." After they hung up, Claire sat in the dark living room and wondered what home even meant anymore. Ohio felt like someone else's life. The army felt like ancient history. And Ashbury was the place that had just told her she didn't belong. She picked up the business card again, turned it over in her hands. 48 hours to decide. She fell asleep on the couch with the TV on, some true crime documentary playing in the background. When she woke up, it was past midnight and someone was pounding on her door. Claire grabbed her phone, ready to call 911. The pounding continued. "Claire, it's Marcus, open up!" She stumbled to the door, peered through the peephole. Marcus Hales stood in the hallway, still in uniform, face pale. She unlocked the door. "What's wrong?" "They found Josh Maddox dead in his cell 2 hours ago." Marcus pushed past her into the apartment. "Someone got to him." Claire's blood went cold. "What do you mean someone got to him?" "Suicide, they're calling it. Bedsheet around his neck." Marcus was pacing now, agitated. "But the guards say he was fine at dinner, no warning signs, and his cellmate was conveniently transferred 3 hours before it happened." "You think someone killed him?" "I think someone didn't want him talking." Marcus stopped pacing, looked at her directly. Vincent Carver was the small fish. Maddox knew more, had more connections, and now he's dead before he could make a deal. Claire sat down slowly. "This is bigger than we thought." "Way bigger. The trafficking network, it's not just ex-military contractors. There are people still in uniform protecting it, people with rank." Marcus's hands were shaking, "and they just sent a message. Talk, and you die." "Does Torres know?" "She's the one who sent me. She wanted you to hear it from someone you trust." He handed her a phone, a burner, no name on the lock screen. She said to call her, now. Claire took the phone, dialed the number from memory. Torres picked up on the first ring. "Maddox is dead," Claire said. "I know, which means the timeline just accelerated." Torres's voice was clipped, all business. "Carver is being moved to protective custody. We're fast-tracking the investigation, and I need your answer tonight, not in 48 hours. Are you in or out?" Claire looked at Marcus, who was watching her with desperate hope, looked at Murphy, who had jumped on the couch and was cleaning his paws, oblivious, looked at the metal case sitting on her kitchen counter. She thought about the hospital that had thrown her away, about the video with 20 million views, about a kid named Walker who died in the sand because she couldn't stop the bleeding fast enough, about the fact that she'd left the army to escape the weight, but the weight had found her anyway. "I'm in," she said. "Good. Be at the federal building tomorrow morning, 8 sharp. Bring your military records and anything you remember about supply chain operations from your deployments. And Claire?" Torres paused. "Watch your back. If they killed Maddox to send a message, you might be next on the list." The line went dead. Marcus let out a breath he'd been holding. "You're really doing this?" "Apparently." "You know this is insane, right? You're a target now." "I've been a target before." Claire stood, went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were steady. That was something. "Besides, they already tried to kill me once. Didn't take." Marcus almost smiled. "That's not as reassuring as you think it is." "Probably not." He left 20 minutes later after making her promise to keep the burner phone charged and check in daily. Claire locked the door behind him, activated the deadbolt she'd been too lazy to use before, and went to her bedroom. Sleep didn't come. She lay in the dark, listening to the building settle around her, and tried to remember the combat breathing techniques they'd taught in basic training. 4 counts in, hold 4, 4 counts out. It helped. A little. At 3 in the morning, her regular phone buzzed. Email from Margaret. Claire, I'm sorry about today. I want you to know I'm still fighting for you. The board is reconvening next week, and I think we can get you reinstated if... Claire deleted it without finishing. At 7, she got up, showered, put on the closest thing she owned to professional clothes. Black pants, a gray blouse, shoes that weren't sneakers. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Thinner than she used to be. Shadows under her eyes, scars on her arms that hadn't been there 6 months ago. She looked like someone who'd been through something. She looked like someone who wasn't done fighting. The federal building was downtown, all concrete and security checkpoints. Claire showed her ID, went through the metal detector, and took the elevator to the 7th floor. Torres was waiting in a conference room with 3 other people. 2 men in suits, 1 woman in army uniform. Claire Donovan, Torres said, gesturing to the table. Meet the task force. Agent Richard Brennan, FBI. Agent Lisa Valdez, also FBI. And Colonel David Park, Army CID. Claire shook hands, sat down. The conference room was windowless and cold, files stacked everywhere. Brennan spoke first. Ms. Donovan, what we're about to discuss is classified. Before we continue, you'll need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He slid papers across the table. Claire read them quickly. Standard confidentiality language, penalties for disclosure, acknowledgement of security protocols. She signed. Good, Brennan said. Here's what we know. The weapons trafficking network has been operating for approximately 7 years. It started small, missing ammunition, a few rifles here and there, but it evolved into something much larger. We're talking heavy weapons, explosives, even classified equipment disappearing from military bases and showing up in the hands of cartels and militia groups. Colonel Park pulled up a screen, showing a map with red dots scattered across the country. These are confirmed theft locations. 23 military installations. The common thread is supply chain access, people who can move equipment without raising flags. And they're protected, Valdez added. Every time we get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses recant. Someone with authority steps in and shuts us down. Which means we're dealing with multiple conspirators at high levels, Torres said. Officers with clearance, contractors with political connections. We can't trust normal channels. Claire looked at the map. So why bring me in? Because you're outside the system, Brennan said. You have military experience, but no current allegiance to any command structure. You've already proven you can't be intimidated, and frankly, you're the only person involved in this case who the public already trusts. The video, Claire said. The video. It's been viewed 30 million times now. You're a household name whether you like it or not. Which means if we put you in front of a camera and you say this network exists, people will believe you. That's leverage we desperately need. Claire leaned back. You want me as a spokesperson. We want you as an investigator who can also communicate findings to the public when necessary, Torres corrected. You'll review evidence, conduct interviews, help build cases. But yes, when we're ready to go public, your voice will matter. And if the people running this network decide I'm too much of a threat, then you'll have federal protection, round-the-clock surveillance, secure housing if needed, panic buttons. Brennan met her eyes. We won't let what happened to Maddox happen to you. The room fell quiet. Claire thought about Marcus's pale face last night, about a man who died in a cell because he knew too much. I want access to everything, she said finally. All files, all evidence, all witness statements. No redactions. Done, Torres said. And I want to interview Carver myself. Brennan and Valdez exchanged glances. That's not standard procedure. I don't care about standard procedure. If I'm risking my life for this, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with, face to face. Claire stood. Those are my terms. Torres smiled slightly. I'll make it happen. 2 days later, Claire sat across from Vincent Carver in a federal holding facility 2 hours outside Ashbury. He was smaller than she remembered, average height, thinning hair, the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd. He wore orange scrubs and wrist shackles, and his eyes never quite met hers. You're the nurse, he said finally. I'm the nurse. You got lucky. I got trained. There's a difference. Carver laughed without humor. Yeah, well, training don't mean much when you're up against the people I'm up against. Tell me about them. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. You ever heard of Phantom Logistics? Claire shook her head. They're a military contractor. Handles supply chain management for half the bases on the East Coast. Trucks, warehouses, inventory systems, totally legit on paper. Carver leaned forward. But they've got a side operation, moving equipment off the books, weapons, ammunition, tech. They sell to anyone with cash, gangs, cartels, private militias. Been doing it for years. And you worked for them. Me and Maddox both. We were low level, muscle. We'd rough up anyone who noticed the discrepancies, make sure they kept quiet. He paused. Until that Marine kid started asking questions we couldn't answer. That's when things got complicated. So you tried to kill him. Orders came down, make it look like a mugging gone wrong. We weren't supposed to have witnesses. His eyes finally met hers. We definitely weren't supposed to run into you. Who gave the orders? Carver smiled grimly. That's the question, isn't it? I know my immediate boss. But above him, it's all shadows, people I've never met, never seen, the kind of people who can make a body disappear and have the paperwork signed off by morning. Like Maddox. Like Maddox. He knew more names than I did, had access to accounts, shipping manifests. That's why they killed him. Carver looked down at his shackled hands. I'm only alive because I'm cooperating, but the second I stop being useful, I'm done. Claire studied him. You're scared. Damn right I'm scared. These people don't play. They've got reach you can't imagine. Then help us cut off that reach. Give us everything you know. Carver was quiet again. Then he started talking, and he didn't stop for 2 hours. When Claire left the facility, Torres was waiting in the parking lot. Get anything useful? Torres asked. Phantom Logistics. That's our target. Claire climbed into the passenger seat. Carver gave me names, dates, locations. It's enough to start building a case. Good. Because we just got word that Phantom's CEO is hosting a charity gala next week in Baltimore. Military brass, politicians, defense contractors. It's the perfect opportunity for what? Torres smiled. For you to ask some very pointed questions in front of people who can't afford to ignore you. Claire stared at her. You want me to crash a party? I want you to attend as a guest of honor. You're a decorated veteran and recent recipient of the Citizen's Medal. You have every right to be there. Torres pulled out a tablet, showed Claire the invitation. We already RSVP'd on your behalf. I don't have anything to wear to a gala. We'll handle that. You just need to show up and make conversation. See who gets nervous when your name comes up, who asks too many questions about the investigation. We'll have agents planted throughout the event listening. This is insane. This is how we catch them. They're arrogant. They think they're untouchable. Torres met her eyes. But you're the one person they didn't plan for. Use that. The gala was 6 days away. Claire spent them reviewing files, memorizing faces, learning the connections between Phantom Logistics and the dozens of shell companies that moved money and weapons through the network. The FBI provided her with a handler, a young agent named Travis Park, who looked barely old enough to drink, but had a mind like a steel trap. Phantom's CEO is Gregory Walsh, Travis explained, spreading photos across the conference table. Former Marine officer, honorable discharge, started the company 12 years ago. On paper, he's clean. Philanthropist, campaign donor, sits on 3 nonprofit boards. And off paper? We think he's the hub. Every thread we pull leads back to him. But we can't prove it yet. He's insulated by layers of executives and contractors who take the fall if anything goes wrong, like Carver and Maddox. Exactly. Walsh never gets his hands dirty, but someone at the gala will know something. Your job is to shake the tree and see what falls out. Claire looked at the photos. Walsh was in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of smile that looked practiced. Next to him were 2 other executives, Miranda Voss, Chief Operations Officer, and Kenneth Lim, Head of Acquisitions. Both military veterans, both with spotless records. What about security? Claire asked. The event is at the Grandmont Hotel. Private ballroom, invitation only, metal detectors at every entrance. You'll be wired, audio transmitter hidden in your jewelry. We'll have 6 agents inside posing as guests and another dozen in surveillance vans outside. And if something goes wrong? Travis didn't sugarcoat it. Then we extract you immediately and the operation is blown. The night of the gala, Claire stood in front of the mirror in the hotel room the FBI had booked for her and barely recognized herself. The dress was simple but elegant, deep blue, long sleeves to hide the scars on her arms, cut professionally enough to look expensive. Someone from the bureau had done her hair and makeup, subtle but polished. She looked like someone who belonged at this kind of event. She felt like an imposter. Torres arrived at 6 to brief her one last time. Remember, you're not going undercover. You're Claire Donovan, veteran and hero. People will want to meet you. Thank you for your service. Let them. Be gracious. But watch their reactions. Watch who pulls away when you mention the investigation. Got it. And Claire? Torres handed her a small earring, diamond stud, microphone embedded in the setting. We'll be listening the whole time. You're not alone. The ballroom was exactly what Claire expected. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a string quartet playing something classical in the corner. 200 people in formal wear, champagne glasses in hand, conversations flowing like water. She felt every eye turned toward her when she entered. A woman approached immediately, 50s, red dress, practiced smile. You must be Claire Donovan. I'm Rebecca Walsh, Gregory's wife. We're so honored to have you here. Claire shook her hand. Thank you for the invitation. Not at all. What you did was remarkable, truly heroic. Rebecca's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Gregory is around here somewhere. I'm sure he'll want to meet you. He's very passionate about supporting our veterans. I'd like that. Rebecca drifted away. Claire accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, took a small sip. Around her, conversations continued. Stock portfolios, vacation homes, political campaigns. The kind of small talk that filled space without saying anything. Then a man's voice behind her. Ms. Donovan. She turned. Gregory Walsh stood there, hand extended, smile wide and warm. I've been hoping to meet you. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Walsh. Claire shook his hand. His grip was firm, confident. You have a beautiful event. It's for a good cause. We're raising money for wounded veteran programs. He gestured to the room. Though I have to say, having you here is worth more than any donation. Your story has inspired so many people. I was just doing what needed to be done. Exactly the kind of humility we need more of. Walsh's eyes were sharp despite the casual tone. I heard you're working with the federal task force now, consulting on supply chain irregularities. There it was, the first probe. Claire smiled politely. I'm helping where I can. It's important work. Of course. We all want our military resources protected. He paused, just slightly. I hope the investigation doesn't cast too wide a net. A lot of contractors do excellent, honest work that could be disrupted by overzealous enforcement. I'm sure the investigators can tell the difference between honest mistakes and deliberate theft. Walsh's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. Indeed. Well, enjoy the evening. If you need anything, please let me know. He walked away. Claire's heart was pounding, but she kept her expression neutral, took another sip of champagne. In her ear, Torres's voice came through clearly. Good work. He's rattled. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions. Claire met executives, politicians, retired generals. Most were polite, grateful, superficial. But a few reacted when she mentioned her consulting work. A subtle tension in the shoulders, a too quick change of subject. Travis had been right. Shake the tree, and things started falling. She was talking to a congressman about veteran health care when Miranda Voss approached. Phantom's COO was tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made Claire immediately wary. Ms. Donovan, I wanted to personally thank you, Voss said, joining the conversation smoothly. What you did for Corporal Hale, it reminds us why we do this work. I appreciate that. I also wanted to extend an offer. If you're ever looking for consulting work beyond the federal investigation, Phantom Logistics would be honored to have someone with your background on our team. We're always looking for veterans who understand the system from the inside. Claire kept her face neutral. That's generous, but I'm committed to the task force for now. Of course. But if things change, Voss handed her a business card. We take care of our people. After Voss left, Torres's voice crackled in Claire's ear. That was a bribe. She just tried to buy you off. Claire slipped the business card into her clutch and kept circulating. By 9 o'clock, she'd talked to 40 people and her feet were killing her. She found an empty corner near the windows, giving herself a moment to breathe. That's when she saw Kenneth Lim talking urgently on his phone near the service entrance. His body language was tense, agitated. Claire couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the stress in his posture. She moved closer, pretending to examine a painting on the wall. Don't care what it takes. Lim was saying, voice low but heated. The shipment needs to be moved tonight before they... He noticed Claire and stopped mid-sentence. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Lim smiled, slipped his phone into his pocket. Ms. Donovan, beautiful event, isn't it? It is. If you'll excuse me, I have another call to make. He walked past her, too quickly to be casual. In her ear, we got it. Audio is clear. That's evidence. Claire's pulse was racing again. She made her way toward the exit, ready to call it a night. She was almost to the door when someone grabbed her arm. She spun, instincts kicking in, and found herself face to face with a man she didn't recognize. Late 40s, military bearing, eyes cold. You need to be more careful, Ms. Donovan, he said quietly. People have been hurt for asking fewer questions than you're asking. Is that a threat? It's advice. From someone who's seen what happens to people who don't know when to walk away. He released her arm. Have a good evening. He disappeared into the crowd before Claire could respond. Torres was in her ear immediately. Did you get his face? No, but you should have him on surveillance. We're checking now. Get out of there. Now. Claire walked toward the exit, forcing herself to maintain a calm pace despite every instinct screaming at her to run. She made it to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby. The doors started to close. A hand shot through, stopping them. Gregory Walsh stepped inside. They were alone. The elevator doors slid shut, and Claire's hand moved instinctively toward the panic button Torres had given her, hidden in her clutch. Walsh stood on the opposite side of the small space, hands folded in front of him, that practiced smile still in place. I wanted to catch you before you left, he said. Make sure you enjoyed yourself. It was a lovely event. I'm glad. The elevator descended. 3rd floor, 2nd. You know, Ms. Donovan, I admire what you did for Corporal Hale, taking those stab wounds. That level of sacrifice is rare. I was just trying to help. Of course. Walsh looked at the floor numbers ticking down. But sometimes, helping can put you in more danger than the original threat. Sometimes the people you're trying to protect aren't who you think they are. And sometimes the people investigating crimes are chasing shadows while the real criminals walk free. 1st floor. The elevator slowed. Are you saying the investigation is wrong? Claire kept her voice level. Walsh's smile widened. I'm saying that truth is complicated, and people who think they're heroes sometimes discover they've been fighting for the wrong side. The doors opened. Claire stepped out into the lobby, Torres's voice urgent in her ear. Team is moving to intercept. Stay in public view. But Walsh didn't follow her. He stood in the elevator, watching her with those sharp, calculating eyes. Be careful, Ms. Donovan, he said as the doors began to close. The next knife might find something vital. The doors shut. Claire stood in the marble lobby, heart hammering, the full weight of what she'd just heard sinking in. That wasn't a warning. That was a promise. Torres met her in the parking garage 3 minutes later, flanked by 2 agents with their hands hovering near concealed weapons. Claire was already pulling the earring out, her fingers shaking slightly despite her best efforts to stay calm. We got everything on tape, Torres said, guiding her toward a black SUV. Walsh just made a direct threat against a federal witness. That's a felony. He's careful, Claire said, climbing into the back seat. He didn't say anything specific enough to prove intent. He told you the next knife might find something vital, after you were stabbed 7 times. Agent Brennan was already in the driver's seat, pulling out of the garage at speed. A decent prosecutor can work with that. A decent defense attorney will tear it apart. He'll say it was concern, a warning about the dangers of the investigation. Claire buckled her seatbelt as Brennan ran a red light, sirens silent but lights flashing. We need more than veiled threats. Torres was typing rapidly on her phone. We're moving you to a safe house tonight. No arguments. What about my cat? We'll send someone to get him. Torres looked up. Claire, these people just demonstrated they know exactly who you are and what you're doing. Kenneth Lim moved up a weapons shipment because of your presence at that gala. Walsh threatened you in an elevator. This isn't a game anymore. It never was. The safe house was 40 minutes outside Ashbury, a nondescript ranch home in a subdivision that looked like every other subdivision Claire had ever seen. Agent swept the interior while she waited in the SUV, watching neighbors walk dogs and kids ride bikes under streetlights. Normal life, continuing oblivious. The house was furnished in generic rental style, Beige couch, laminate counters, artwork that came in bulk from hotel liquidation sales. But the windows had reinforced glass, and there were panic buttons in every room. Travis Park was already set up at the dining table with 3 laptops and enough surveillance equipment to stock a small precinct. "Welcome to your new home," he said without looking up. "We've got perimeter cameras, motion sensors, and 2 agents in a car down the street running shifts. You're as safe as we can make you." Claire dropped her clutch on the counter. "How long?" "Until we can bring charges or until the threat level drops, whichever comes first." Travis finally looked at her. "The audio from Lim's phone call is being analyzed now. He mentioned a shipment moving tonight. If we can intercept it, we might have enough to start making arrests." "Where's the shipment going?" "We're working on that. His call was encrypted, but our tech team is running traces." Travis pulled up a map on one of the laptops. "Phantom Logistics operates warehouses in 7 states. My guess is they're moving the stolen equipment to a distribution point before it leaves the country." Torres came in from the kitchen holding a coffee pot. "I just got off with the director. FBI is coordinating with Customs and Border Patrol. Every port from Baltimore to Miami is on alert." "They won't use ports," Claire said. Both agents looked at her. "If they're moving tonight, it's because we spooked them. They're not going to risk official channels. They'll use private transport, small airfields, cargo trucks, routes that bypass checkpoints." "How do you know that?" Travis asked. "Because that's what we did in Afghanistan when we needed to move supplies off the books. You don't file flight plans, you don't log manifests, you just load and go, and by the time anyone notices, you're 3 states away." Claire sat down at the table. "Pull up a list of private airstrips within 200 miles of Baltimore." Travis typed rapidly. "That's going to be a lot. Filter for ones with cargo capacity and minimal oversight. Family operations, charter services, places that don't ask questions if you pay cash." The list narrowed to 23 locations. Claire studied them, trying to think like someone running a criminal network. Where would she move high-value cargo if she needed it gone immediately? Her finger stopped on one. Riverside County Executive Airport. It's small, mostly private planes, but it has a cargo facility. And look, she zoomed in on the satellite view. That warehouse complex half a mile south, perfect distance to truck equipment in without being directly on airport property. Torres leaned over her shoulder. Phantom Logistics owns that warehouse. Then that's where they're going. Brennan was already on his phone coordinating with field teams. Claire listened to half the conversation: authorization for surveillance, requests for tactical units, jurisdictional complications because the airport straddled county lines. The bureaucracy of law enforcement grinding forward while a shipment of stolen weapons prepared to vanish into the night. "We need to move now," Claire said. "We can't just raid the place without evidence," Torres replied. "We need probable cause, warrants. By the time you get warrants, they'll be gone. You know that. And if we go in without proper authority, any evidence we find gets thrown out in court. These people have expensive lawyers. We can't give them ammunition." Torres's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression tightening. "Understood. We're on our way." She hung up. That was the surveillance team at Riverside. They just spotted 3 semi-trucks entering the warehouse complex. No company markings, no visible identification. "That's our shipment," Claire said. "Probably. But we still can't—" "Yes, you can." Claire stood. "I'm a civilian consultant. I can go to that airport right now as a private citizen. If I happen to observe criminal activity and report it, that gives you probable cause to intervene." Brennan shook his head. "Absolutely not. You're not trained for tactical operations." "I'm a combat veteran who got stabbed 7 times 3 weeks ago." Torres's voice rose. "You're still healing. Your lung capacity is diminished. You have limited mobility in your left arm. And you're not law enforcement. Neither is Gregory Walsh, but that's not stopping him from running a criminal empire." Claire grabbed her jacket. "Either I go with you or I drive there myself. Your choice." Torres and Brennan exchanged looks. Some silent communication passed between them that Claire couldn't read. "Fine," Torres said finally. "But you stay in the vehicle, you observe and report, nothing else. The second things get dangerous, you're out." "Agreed." They were lying to each other and both of them knew it. The drive to Riverside took 35 minutes. Claire sat in the back of the SUV watching the city give way to industrial zones, then to flat farmland broken by warehouse clusters. Brennan drove without lights or sirens, just another vehicle on the highway. 2 more FBI cars followed at a distance, invisible unless you were looking for them. Travis fed them updates from his laptop. Thermal imaging shows approximately 15 people inside the warehouse. 3 vehicles, confirmed as semi-trucks, backed up to loading docks. Movement consistent with cargo transfer. Weapons? Torres asked. Can't confirm from thermal alone, but the weight distribution in those trucks suggests heavy equipment. They parked half a mile from the warehouse complex, tucked behind an abandoned grain silo that gave them sight lines on the facility. Claire pulled out binoculars, scanned the building. The trucks were exactly where Travis said, their cargo bays open. Men moved between the warehouse and the vehicles carrying long crates. Those are M4 rifle cases, Claire said quietly. Standard military issue. Torres took the binoculars, looked for herself. I count 8 armed guards. This is bigger than a simple theft ring. It's a military operation, Claire said. Walsh is ex-Marine. He's running this like a combat logistics mission. Brennan's radio crackled. Alpha team in position. We have eyes on the north entrance. Bravo team set. South entrance covered. Charlie team ready. West approach clear. Torres keyed her own radio. All teams hold position. Do not engage without authorization. She looked at Brennan. We need to wait until they start moving the trucks. Catch them in the act of transporting stolen military equipment. And if they spot us first? Brennan asked. Then we adapt. They didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the warehouse doors began to close. Engines rumbled to life. The first semi pulled away from the loading dock, heading for the access road that connected to the highway. All teams, prepare to intercept, Torres said into her radio. Wait for my signal. The truck approached the checkpoint at the complex entrance. A guard waved it through without even checking the cargo bay. The second truck followed. Then the third. Now, Torres said. FBI vehicles roared to life from 3 directions, lights blazing, surrounding the trucks before they could scatter. Agents poured out with weapons drawn, shouting commands. The truck drivers hit their brakes, hands up, smart enough not to run. But the warehouse was a different story. The guards inside saw the FBI lights and scattered. Some ran for vehicles, others disappeared into the building. Claire watched through the binoculars as muzzle flashes lit up the warehouse windows. Shots fired, someone shouted over the radio. We are taking fire from inside the facility. Brennan swore, reaching for his rifle. Torres was already calling for backup. The carefully planned intercept had turned into a firefight in the span of 30 seconds. Claire's training kicked in before her brain caught up. She was out of the SUV and moving toward the warehouse before Torres could stop her. Claire, get back here! But Claire was already running, keeping low, using the parked vehicles for cover, the way she'd been taught a decade ago. Gunfire cracked overhead, not aimed at her, aimed at the FBI agents trying to enter the warehouse. Someone inside knew what they were doing, knew how to pin down attackers and buy time for others to escape. She reached the west wall of the warehouse, pressed herself against the corrugated metal. There was a service door 20 feet ahead, partially open. She could hear shouting inside, boots on concrete, the mechanical sound of rifles being loaded. This was insane. She was unarmed, barely healed. Not law enforcement. She went through the door anyway. The interior was chaos. Crates stacked everywhere, forklifts abandoned mid-operation, overhead lights casting harsh shadows. Claire moved between the cargo containers, trying to orient herself. The gunfire was coming from the east side of the building, the guards making a stand against the FBI breach team. She was moving toward the sound when someone grabbed her from behind. Claire reacted on pure instinct. Elbow back into solar plexus. Foot stomp on instep. Twist and break the grip. The man stumbled backward, gasping, and Claire got her first good look at him. Not a guard. Civilian clothes. 40-something. He had a radio in one hand and a pistol in the other. Kenneth Lim. You! He wheezed, bringing the pistol up. You couldn't leave it alone? Claire raised her hands slowly. It's over, Lim. FBI has the building surrounded. Nothing's over. We've been doing this for 7 years. You think one raid is going to stop us? He was backing toward a door marked Emergency Exit. Walsh has contingencies, backups, people you haven't even found yet. Then give them to us. Cooperate. Cut a deal before this gets worse. Lim laughed bitterly. You don't understand. There is no deal. People like Walsh don't go to prison. They have too much dirt on too many important people. The second this investigation gets too close, someone will shut it down. Someone always does. Not this time. You're naive. He reached the exit door, pushed it open with his back. Carver thought cooperating would save him. Look how that worked out. Maddox tried to negotiate. He's dead, and you... The gun steadied on her chest. You're the loose end that should have been cut 3 weeks ago. Claire heard the shot before she felt it, a sharp crack that echoed through the warehouse. But the impact never came. Limb dropped, blood spreading across his shoulder. He'd been hit from behind, through the exit door he'd just opened. Claire spun. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway, service pistol still raised, face pale but steady. You followed me, Claire said. Torres called me. Said you were about to do something stupid. Marcus moved into the warehouse, keeping his weapon trained on Lim. Guess she was right. Lim was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Marcus kicked the gun away, called for a medic over the radio. Why are you here? Claire asked Marcus. Because you saved my life. Figured I owed you one. He glanced at her. And because someone needs to keep you from getting killed. The gunfire had stopped. FBI agents were clearing the warehouse, calling out room by room. Torres appeared from the main entrance, took one look at Claire and Lim, and her expression went dark. You were supposed to stay in the vehicle. I know. You engaged a suspect without backup or authorization. I know. Torres looked at Marcus. And you are? Corporal Marcus Hale, ma'am. I'm the Marine Ms. Donovan saved. He lowered his weapon. I shot the suspect when he aimed at her. Seemed like the right call. It was, Torres said. Then to Claire, we're going to have a very long conversation about operational protocols. Looking forward to it. Medical arrived and took Lim away on a stretcher. He'd survived the shoulder wound. Marcus had aimed to disable, not kill. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Lim looked at Claire one last time. You won't stop them, he said. You can't. Watch me. The raid netted 17 arrests and enough evidence to fill 3 evidence trucks. Weapons, documents, financial records, computers. Agent Valdez coordinated the processing, her face grim but satisfied. This is enough to indict Walsh and his entire executive team, she told Torres. We've got serial numbers matching equipment reported stolen from Fort Bragg, Camp Pendleton, and 3 other bases. We've got shipping manifests with forged signatures. We've got bank transfers to shell companies in the Caymans. What about Walsh himself? Claire asked. Is he still at the gala? Valdez shook her head. He left 20 minutes after you did. Private jet filed a flight plan to the Bahamas 30 minutes ago. He's running, Torres said. We've got warrants out. Interpol is being notified. He won't get far. But Claire wasn't so sure. Men like Walsh had contingency plans for their contingency plans. By the time law enforcement caught up, he'd be somewhere without extradition treaties, living off money hidden in accounts no one could trace. Unless they moved faster. Where did his plane file the flight plan to? Claire asked. Valdez checked her tablet. Nassau International. But he could divert once he's in the air. Private jets don't have to stick to filed plans. What's his plane's tail number? November 74 Tango, Whiskey. Why? Claire was already pulling out her phone, dialing a number she'd memorized but never thought she'd use. Colonel Reeves answered on the second ring. Ms. Donovan, I heard there was excitement tonight. Sir, I need a favor. A big one. Claire explained the situation quickly. Walsh fleeing the country, evidence of trafficking that implicated active military personnel, the possibility of a network that extended into classified operations. If he gets away, we lose everything. He'll disappear and the people protecting him will cover their tracks. Reeves was quiet for a moment. What are you asking me to do? You have contacts in Air Force Command, people who can track civilian aircraft. If Walsh's plane is headed for the Bahamas, we need it intercepted before it reaches international waters. That's a significant overstep of military authority. Yes, sir, but so is stealing weapons and selling them to criminals. Claire took a breath. You gave me that challenge coin because you said I never stopped being a soldier. Well, I'm asking you to act like one too. Help me finish this. Another pause, then, I'll make some calls. No promises. He hung up. Torres had been listening. You just asked a military officer to intercept a civilian aircraft. I asked him to prevent a fugitive from fleeing justice. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it should work. Because from where I'm standing, every time we try to do this by the book, someone with money and connections slips through the cracks. Torres didn't have an answer for that. They drove back to Ashbury as dawn broke over the highway. Claire's phone rang halfway there. Reeves. Walsh's plane has been diverted to Joint Base Charleston, he said without preamble. They're being told it's a mechanical issue requiring immediate landing. Once he's on the ground, local FBI can take custody. How did you? I didn't. Officially, this conversation never happened. Unofficially, there are people in the Pentagon who are very interested in shutting down corruption in military supply chains. Walsh just became their problem. Reeves paused. Good work, soldier. The line went dead. Torres looked at Claire. What was that? Justice, Claire said. Gregory Walsh was arrested on the tarmac at Joint Base Charleston at 0600 hours. The footage made the morning news. A man in an expensive suit being led away in handcuffs, shouting about lawyers and due process while FBI agents read him his rights. His wife Rebecca was arrested simultaneously at their home in Baltimore. Miranda Voss was picked up at her office. By noon, 23 people connected to Phantom Logistics were in federal custody. By evening, the story had gone national. Claire watched the coverage from the safe house. Murphy curled in her lap. An agent had retrieved him along with a bag of her clothes. The cat seemed unbothered by the relocation, more concerned with the fact that dinner was 15 minutes late. The news anchors called it the biggest military corruption case in decades. Senators were calling for hearings. The Secretary of Defense had issued a statement promising full investigation and accountability. And Claire's name was everywhere. The veteran who'd helped break the case, the nurse who'd survived an assassination attempt, the hero who wouldn't quit. She turned off the TV. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. You okay? Tired. You? Same. Also thinking about re-enlisting. Turns out sitting behind a desk makes me appreciate field work. Don't get any ideas. We're not partners. Yet. Claire smiled despite herself. Another text came through. This one from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Donovan, this is Rebecca Holt from the Washington Post. I know you've declined interviews, but I think you should reconsider. Your story matters, and I'd like to help you tell it on your terms. Please think about it. Delete. Then one more. From the hospital. Claire, it's Margaret. The board met this morning. Your suspension is lifted effective immediately. We'd like you to come back. There's also interest in having you develop a crisis response training program for nursing staff. Call me when you're ready to talk. Claire stared at that message for a long time. The hospital that had thrown her away now wanted her back, wanted her expertise, wanted to capitalize on the attention she'd brought them. She typed back, I'll think about it. But she already knew the answer. Torres arrived at the safe house at 9 p.m. with takeout and a bottle of wine that probably violated about 6 federal protocols. We're celebrating, she announced, setting food on the kitchen counter. Walsh is talking. He's giving up everyone. Names, accounts, operations we didn't even know existed. He's trying to cut a deal, Claire said. He's trying. Whether he gets one depends on how good his information is. Torres poured 2 glasses of wine. But either way, we've dismantled the network. 7 years of trafficking operations, gone. Because you wouldn't let go. Because a lot of people wouldn't let go, Claire corrected. Marcus, you, Brennan, Travis, all the agents who worked this case. Fair. But you were the catalyst. Torres raised her glass. To finishing what you started. They drank. The wine was mediocre, but the company was good. What happens now? Claire asked. Now we build the case for trial. You'll testify, probably multiple times. The defense will try to tear apart your credibility. The media will dissect every decision you made. It's going to be brutal. Can't wait. Torres smiled. After that? Whatever you want. The consulting contract is open-ended. We could use someone like you on a permanent basis. Or you could go back to nursing, or do something completely different. You've earned that choice. Claire looked at Murphy, who was investigating the takeout bag with intense focus. I don't know what I want. Then figure it out. You've got time. But she didn't. The attack came at 2 a.m. Claire was asleep on the couch when Murphy's low growl woke her. The cat was at the window, back arched, staring at something in the darkness outside. Claire sat up slowly. The house was quiet. The perimeter lights were off. They'd been on when she fell asleep. Her hand found the panic button, pressed it. Nothing happened. The power was out. She moved to the window, staying low. The agents in the surveillance car down the street should have reacted to the power failure, should have called it in. But the car was dark, empty. Claire's training screamed at her to move, to get out, to not wait for threats to come to her. She grabbed her phone, tried to call Torres. No signal. Jammed. The back door exploded inward. Claire ran for the bedroom, grabbed the go bag the FBI had packed for her, threw it over her shoulder. She could hear footsteps in the house. Multiple people. Professional. Coordinated. Not police. Not FBI. She went out the bedroom window just as her door crashed open. Hit the ground rolling, came up running. The backyard led to a drainage ditch, then woods. She made it to the tree line as gunfire erupted behind her. Rounds tore through leaves and bark. Claire kept moving, using the terrain like she'd been taught, zigzagging, staying low. Behind her, she could hear pursuit. At least 3 people, maybe more. They'd found her. Despite the safe house, despite the protection, despite everything. Someone had given her up. She ran for 10 minutes before her lung capacity gave out. The collapsed lung from the stabbing still hadn't fully healed, and now it was screaming in protest. She ducked behind a fallen tree, gasping, trying to control her breathing. Footsteps approached. Tactical boots on forest floor. A flashlight beam swept the area where she was hiding. "Contact lost," someone said into a radio. "Searching grid pattern." The voice was familiar. Claire risked a look over the log. The man with the flashlight was wearing FBI tactical gear, but it was the man from the gala. The one who'd grabbed her arm, the one who'd warned her to walk away. He was FBI. The corruption went deeper than anyone had realized, and Claire was alone in the woods with people who wanted her dead. Claire stayed behind the log, barely breathing, watching the fake FBI agent sweep his flashlight in slow arcs. He was methodical, patient, the kind of patience that came from hunting people professionally. She had no weapon, no backup, no way to call for help. The go bag had a first aid kit, some cash, a burner phone that wouldn't work with the jammer active, and a change of clothes. Nothing useful for surviving a manhunt. The agent moved closer. 10 feet, 8. Claire's hand found a rock about the size of her fist. Not much, but better than nothing. She waited until his back was turned, then threw it hard to her left. It crashed through the underbrush 20 yards away. The agent spun, flashlight following the sound. "Movement northeast. I'm pursuing." He ran toward the noise. Claire went the opposite direction, moving as quietly as she could manage. Her side ached where the stab wound had been. Her breathing was ragged, but she kept moving, putting distance between herself and the hunters. She made it another quarter mile before she heard engines. Vehicles on the road that bordered the woods. They were boxing her in, cutting off escape routes. This wasn't a random hit. This was a coordinated operation with resources and planning. Someone very high up wanted her dead. Claire found a drainage culvert and crawled inside, pressing herself against the cold concrete. Water trickled past her, smelling of rust and decay. She pulled out the burner phone, checked it. Still no signal. The jammer had range. She needed to get further away. Needed to find help. But who could she trust? Torres? Marcus? Anyone at the FBI could be compromised. The man hunting her was wearing their gear, using their tactics. He'd known where the safe house was, known when to strike, known how to disable the security. This went all the way up. Claire waited in the culvert for 20 minutes, listening to vehicles patrol the road. When the sound faded, she crawled out and kept moving west. Away from Ashbury, away from anyone who knew where to find her. Dawn was breaking when she reached a truck stop off Highway 40. She'd walked nearly 6 miles, her clothes soaked from the drainage water, her body screaming in protest. But she was alive. The truck stop had security cameras everywhere. Good. If someone tried to kill her here, there'd be witnesses. Evidence. She went to the bathroom first, cleaned up as best she could, changed into the spare clothes from the go bag. Then she bought a prepaid phone from the convenience store using cash, went outside to the parking lot, and found a spot away from the building. The burner phone finally had signal. She dialed Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Claire? Where the hell are you? Torres is going crazy. The safe house was hit. Agents are dead." "I know. I was there." "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. But Marcus, listen carefully. The people who attacked the safe house, one of them was FBI. I saw him at the gala. He was part of the operation." Silence on the other end. "Marcus? I'm here, just processing." His voice was tight. "If FBI is compromised, then who can we trust?" "I don't know." That's why I'm calling you. You're outside the bureau. You don't have divided loyalties. What do you need? A safe place to hide while I figure out who's dirty and who's clean. Somewhere off the books. No official connections. Marcus thought for a moment. My parents have a cabin in the Shenandoah Valley. My dad uses it for hunting. No internet, no landline, just a generator and a well. Nobody knows about it except family. Can you meet me there? Give me 4 hours. I'll bring supplies and a clean phone. He rattled off coordinates. And Claire? Don't trust anyone until we sort this out. Not Torres, not Brennan, nobody. Already there. She hung up, then immediately pulled the battery from the burner phone. If they were tracking her calls, she'd just bought herself a few hours before they triangulated her location. A semi-truck was idling nearby, driver checking his cargo straps. Claire approached him. Excuse me, where are you heading? He looked her up and down, taking in the disheveled appearance. Winchester. Why? Any chance I could catch a ride? I can pay. The driver hesitated. I don't usually take passengers. Claire pulled out $80 from the go bag. Please, I'm trying to get away from someone. Something in her voice must have convinced him. He nodded toward the cab. Get in, but I'm not asking questions and you're not volunteering answers. Deal. The cabin was exactly as Marcus had described, isolated, rustic, and invisible from the main road. Claire had the driver drop her 2 miles away, then hiked in through the woods. The place was unlocked, empty, cold. She found the generator, got it running, and barricaded herself inside. Marcus arrived 3 hours later with 2 duffel bags and a grim expression. He'd brought food, water, ammunition, and 2 handguns. I signed out for leave, he said, setting the bags on the floor. Told my CO I had a family emergency, which isn't technically a lie. Did anyone follow you? Not that I could tell. I ditched my phone, took 3 different vehicles, and ran counter surveillance the whole way. He pulled out a laptop. I also grabbed this from the battalion intelligence shop. It's air-gapped, no network connection. We can review files without being tracked. Claire took one of the handguns, checked the magazine, fully loaded. We need to figure out who the mole is. Moles, plural, Marcus corrected. This operation was too smooth for one person. They had the safe house location, the security protocols, the timing. That's multiple sources feeding information. He opened the laptop, pulled up files he'd copied before leaving base. I've been doing some digging on my own, looking at who had access to what information, who knew where you were, who could authorize tactical teams. And 3 people knew everything, Torres, Brennan, and a deputy director named Frank Kozlowski. He's been overseeing the trafficking investigation from Washington. I've never met Kozlowski. Most people haven't. He stays behind the scenes. Career bureaucrat, 30 years with the Bureau, spotless record. Marcus pulled up a photo. Mid-60s, gray hair, forgettable face. But I found something interesting. Before he was FBI, he was Army. Same unit, same time frame as Gregory Walsh. Claire felt her stomach drop. They served together. Not just served. Walsh was Kozlowski's commanding officer. They deployed to Iraq together in 2004. Marcus clicked through more files. After they both left the service, Kozlowski joined FBI. Walsh started Phantom Logistics. And over the next 15 years, every investigation that got close to Walsh somehow died. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Cases fell apart. Because Kozlowski was protecting him. That's my theory, but I can't prove it. Everything is circumstantial. Marcus closed the laptop. We need something concrete. Something that directly ties Kozlowski to the trafficking network. Claire thought about the gala, about Walsh's confidence when he'd threatened her in the elevator, about Lim saying someone would always shut down the investigation. Walsh is talking, she said. Torres told me he's giving up everyone. What if we get him to give up Kozlowski? He's in federal custody. We can't just walk in and interview him. No, but Torres can. Claire grabbed the clean phone Marcus had brought. If she doesn't know about Kozlowski, we need to tell her. And if she does know, then she's part of it too, Marcus finished. It was a risk, but they were out of options. Claire dialed Torres's number. It rang 4 times before someone answered. Torres. It's me. Silence. Then, Claire, thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? For now, I need you to listen very carefully. The attack on the safe house was an inside job. One of the men hunting me was FBI. I know. We found his body this morning. Agent Scott Mercer, tactical team, 20-year veteran. Someone executed him after the attack, made it look like you did it in self-defense. Claire's blood ran cold. They were framing her. I didn't kill anyone. I ran. I believe you, but Kozlowski is spinning this differently. He's telling the director you went rogue, that you killed Mercer and fled. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Kozlowski is dirty. He's served with Walsh. He's been protecting the network for years. Another pause. How do you know that? Because I'm not the only one investigating. Where are you right now? At the field office. Kozlowski is here too. He's coordinating the manhunt. Get away from him. Don't tell him about this call. And whatever you do, don't let him near Walsh. Claire, what are you planning? I'm going to finish this, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Torres didn't answer immediately. Claire could hear her breathing, could almost feel the calculations happening on the other end of the line. I've trusted you this far, Torres said finally. I'm not stopping now. What do you need? Access to Walsh, face to face, and a way to record the conversation without anyone knowing. That's impossible. He's in a federal detention facility with round-the-clock surveillance. Kozlowski has to approve all visitor requests. Then we don't ask for a permission. Claire looked at Marcus, who was already nodding. You're Navy JAG. You have authority to interview suspects in ongoing military corruption cases. Use that. Get in to see Walsh. Bring me as your assistant. Kozlowski doesn't need to know until we're already there. That's a massive breach of protocol. So is trying to kill a witness. Your choice. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Where and when? They met at a rest stop 80 miles outside Baltimore at midnight. Torres arrived alone in an unmarked car, no tail that Marcus could detect from his observation post in the woods. Claire got in the passenger seat. Torres looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, coffee stains on her shirt, the kind of wear that came from 72 hours without sleep. You look terrible, Torres said. You're not winning any beauty contests either. Torres almost smiled, then she pulled out a tablet. I reviewed everything. Marcus was right. Kozlowski and Walsh served together. But it goes deeper. I found financial records. Shell companies in the Caymans funneling money to an account in Kozlowski's wife's name. We're talking millions over the last decade. Can you prove it came from Phantom? Not yet. But if Walsh confirms it on record, we can trace the transfers. Torres handed Claire a small device that looked like a pen. Recording device, military grade. Click the top twice to activate. It'll capture everything within 20 feet. What about getting us in to see Walsh? I filed the visitor request 2 hours ago under Military Investigative Authority. Cited national security concerns related to weapons trafficking. By the time Kozlowski sees the paperwork tomorrow, we'll be done. Torres started the car. But Claire, if this goes wrong, we're both finished. I'll lose my commission. You'll go to prison for murder. Then we don't let it go wrong. The federal detention center was a concrete fortress in the middle of nowhere. Torres showed her credentials at the gate, explained that Claire was her civilian consultant on military supply chain protocols. The guard checked the visitor log, made a phone call, then waved them through. They were searched, scanned, and escorted through 3 security checkpoints before reaching the interview rooms. Walsh was already waiting, dressed in orange scrubs, hands cuffed to the table. He looked smaller than he had at the gala, diminished, but his eyes were still sharp when Claire entered the room. Miss Donovan, I wondered when you'd show up. Claire sat down across from him. Torres stayed standing, arms crossed. The pen recorder was in Claire's shirt pocket, activated. You've been very forthcoming with the prosecutors, Claire said. Giving up names, bank accounts, shipping routes. Very cooperative. I'm a pragmatist. The network is finished. I'm just trying to minimize my sentence. You gave them Voss. You gave them Lim. You gave them 40 other people. But you haven't given them everyone. Walsh smiled slightly. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. You have protection at the highest levels. Someone who's been covering for you for years. Someone who made sure investigations died before they could touch you. Claire leaned forward. I want his name. And why would I give you that? He's my insurance policy. As long as he's out there, I have leverage. Your leverage died when they tried to kill me and failed. Now Kozlowski is exposed. It's only a matter of time before we prove the connection. Walsh's expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. Frank Kozlowski, Claire said. Deputy Director, FBI. Your former commanding officer, your partner. How much did you pay him over the years? 5 million? 10? You can't prove anything. I can if you confirm it. Right here, right now. Tell us how it worked. How he protected you. How he fed you information about investigations. How he made evidence disappear. Claire's voice was steady, relentless. You're going to prison either way. But if you cooperate, you might see daylight again before you're 90. If you don't, you'll die in a cell. Your choice. Walsh studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a bitter, defeated sound. You really don't quit, do you? Not when Marines get stabbed in the street. Not when good soldiers die because weapons end up in the wrong hands. No, I don't quit. Walsh looked down at his cuffed hands. Frank and I started this 15 years ago. Small time at first. Just skimming a little off the top. Equipment that was going to be decommissioned anyway, but it grew. Bigger contracts, bigger shipments, bigger risks. He paused. Frank protected me from inside the bureau. Anytime an investigation got close, he'd step in, redirect resources, discredit witnesses. He was very good at it. How did he know when to intervene? He had people everywhere. Agents who owed him favors, analysts who fed him information. The bureau is a big machine, easy to manipulate if you know which levers to pull. And the money? Transferred through shell companies. Frank's wife owns a consulting firm that technically advises on security protocols. We'd pay her company for services rendered, totally legal on paper, except the services were fictional. Torres stepped forward. You're saying Deputy Director Kozlowski actively obstructed federal investigations for personal profit? That's exactly what I'm saying. Walsh looked at Claire. Is this what you wanted? My insurance policy gone? Because the second you move against Frank, I'm a dead man. He has people in every prison in the system. Then I guess you better hope we move fast. They left Walsh in the interview room and walked back to the car in silence. Claire's hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. They had it. Walsh's full confession, recorded, admissible. Torres drove 3 blocks before pulling over and letting out a long breath. We just took down a deputy director of the FBI. We haven't taken him down yet, Claire said. He's still free, still dangerous. The second he finds out Walsh talked, he'll run. Then we don't give him the chance. Torres pulled out her phone, started making calls. I'm contacting the Inspector General's office directly, bypassing normal channels. They'll move on Kozlowski within the hour. Claire listened to Torres coordinate the operation, arrest warrants, asset freezes, emergency meetings with the director. The machinery of justice grinding into motion. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. You okay? We got him. Good, because you've got company. Claire looked up. A black SUV had pulled in behind them, lights off. 2 more appeared from side streets, boxing them in. Torres, Claire said quietly. Torres saw them too. Her hand moved toward her weapon. The SUV's doors opened. Federal agents poured out, weapons drawn, and leading them was Frank Kozlowski. He walked up to Torres's window, tapped on the glass. Torres rolled it down slowly. Commander Torres, Kozlowski said pleasantly. Step out of the vehicle, please. You're under arrest for aiding a fugitive. On whose authority? Mine. Claire Donovan is wanted for the murder of Agent Mercer. You were seen meeting with her, transporting her to a federal facility, and conspiring to interfere with an ongoing manhunt. He smiled. I have 6 witnesses who will testify you've been compromised. Torres didn't move. I'm executing a military investigation under lawful authority. Your authority ended when you started breaking laws. Kozlowski's expression hardened. Get out of the car. Both of you. Now. Claire's mind raced. If they were arrested, the recording would be confiscated. Walsh's confession would disappear into evidence lockup that Kozlowski controlled. Everything they'd just accomplished would be erased. She clicked the pen recorder twice. Off. Then palmed it, slipping it into her sock while pretending to reach for the door handle. They were pulled out of the car roughly, hands cuffed behind their backs. Agents searched them, found Torres's service weapon, found Claire's phone, but they missed the pen in her sock. Where were you tonight? Kozlowski asked Torres. Conducting an authorized interview. With whom? That's classified. Kozlowski smiled. We'll see about that. He turned to his agents. Take them to the field office. Separate interrogation rooms. I want full statements. As they were being loaded into separate vehicles, Claire caught Torres's eye. Torres gave the smallest nod. She understood. Keep quiet. Don't give them anything. Buy time. The field office was nearly empty at 2 in the morning. They took Claire to a windowless room, cuffed her to the table, and left her alone for an hour. Standard interrogation tactic. Let the suspect stew, get nervous, start second-guessing. But Claire had been through SERE training. She knew how to wait. When Kozlowski finally entered, he was carrying a file folder and a cup of coffee that smelled better than anything Claire had access to. "Miss Donovan, we meet at last." He sat down across from her. "I've heard a lot about you. The hero nurse, the decorated veteran, the woman who just won't quit." He opened the folder. "Unfortunately, the evidence suggests you're also a murderer." "I didn't kill Mercer." "No? Then explain how his blood ended up on your clothing, how his service weapon was found near the safe house with your fingerprints, how 3 witnesses place you at the scene." Claire said nothing. "Here's what I think happened," Kozlowski continued. "The stress of the investigation got to you. PTSD from your military service, unresolved trauma from the stabbing. You became paranoid, convinced the FBI was compromised. When Agent Mercer approached you at the safe house, you panicked and shot him. Then you fled." "That's a good story. Completely false, but creative." Kozlowski leaned back. "The truth doesn't matter as much as what I can prove. And I can prove you killed a federal agent. That's life in prison. Unless..." He paused. "Unless you cooperate. Tell me what you discussed with Gregory Walsh tonight. Tell me what Torres has been feeding you. Give me everything, and I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you were cooperative." "I want a lawyer." "Of course you do. But here's the problem. Your lawyer won't be able to access the evidence for weeks. Discovery takes time. Meanwhile, you'll be in lockup with people who really don't like cop killers. It would be a shame if something happened to you before trial." The threat was clear. Cooperate or die. Claire met his eyes. "I know about you and Walsh. I know about the money. I know you've been protecting the trafficking network for 15 years. And I know that confession is going to bury you." Kozlowski's expression didn't change, but his eyes went cold. "What confession?" "The one Walsh gave us 2 hours ago, where he named you, described your arrangement, gave us bank account numbers, dates, amounts, all on record." "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check with the detention center. See who visited Walsh tonight. See what time Torres filed her request." Claire leaned forward as far as the cuffs allowed. "You're done. The only question is whether you go down alone or take everyone with you." Kozlowski stood abruptly, chair scraping. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Claire watched his face change as someone on the other end confirmed the visit. He ended the call, looked at Claire. "Where's the recording?" "Someplace you'll never find it." "We searched you." "Not well enough." Kozlowski's hand moved toward his weapon. For a moment, Claire thought he might actually shoot her right there in the interrogation room, but he controlled himself, holstered the gun. "You just signed your death warrant," he said quietly. "I signed yours first." He left the room. Claire heard him barking orders in the hallway. Find the recording, search her again, lock down the building. But they were too late. Because while Kozlowski had been interrogating Claire, Marcus had been busy. The pen recorder in her sock had a backup function. It transmitted everything it captured to a paired device within 50 yards. And Marcus, sitting in a car across the street with directional antenna, had received every word. Walsh's confession, Kozlowski's threats, everything. And 30 minutes ago, he'd uploaded it all to a secure server with instructions to release the files to every major news outlet if he didn't check in every hour. Claire's phone, still in evidence lockup, buzzed with a message Marcus had sent before the upload. Package delivered. Timer set. Your move. The agent monitoring her phone saw the message, read it, and went pale. Claire smiled. The game had just changed. The agent monitoring Claire's phone stared at the screen for 3 seconds before bolting from the room. She could hear him in the hallway, voice rising in panic as he tried to explain to someone what he'd just read. Claire waited, counted her breaths, kept her expression neutral even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Kozlowski burst back into the interrogation room 90 seconds later, phone in hand, face red. "What server? Where did he upload it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The message. Your partner. He uploaded something." "Where?" Claire shrugged as much as the cuffs allowed. "You'll have to ask him, but I'm guessing by now it's already distributed to backup locations. Cloud storage, multiple jurisdictions, the kind of thing that can't be disappeared with a phone call." Kozlowski slammed his hand on the table. You think you're clever? You think this changes anything? I can bury that recording, discredit it, claim it was doctored or obtained illegally. You can try, but Walsh's lawyers will confirm he gave a voluntary statement. Torres will testify about the visit, and once the media gets hold of it, Claire paused. Well, good luck controlling that narrative. Kozlowski's jaw worked. He was calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to salvage the situation. But they both knew the truth. The recording was out there. The evidence was real. And his career was over. You should have walked away when I warned you, he said quietly. At the gala, I gave you a chance. That was you? In the elevator, I thought it was Walsh. Walsh makes threats. I deliver consequences. His hand moved toward his weapon again. Still can. The door opened before he could draw. Director Patricia Moss stepped in, flanked by 2 agents from the Inspector General's office. She was in her 60s, silver hair pulled back, wearing a suit despite the early hour. Deputy Director Kozlowski, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Step away from the detainee. Kozlowski turned. Ma'am, this woman is a suspect in I've been briefed by Commander Torres, by the IG's office, and by the Attorney General himself, who is very interested to learn about certain financial irregularities involving your wife's consulting firm. Moss gestured to the IG agents. You're relieved of duty pending investigation. Surrender your credentials and weapon. This is ridiculous. You're taking the word of a fugitive and a compromised officer. I'm taking the word of evidence. Bank records, witness testimony, and a recording that was just delivered to my office 20 minutes ago. Moss held up a tablet. Gregory Walsh's full confession, naming you, describing 15 years of corruption. It's over, Frank. Kozlowski looked at Claire, pure hatred in his eyes. Then he unbuckled his holster, handed over his weapon and badge. You'll regret this, he said to Moss. I regret that it took this long to catch you. Moss nodded to the IG agents. Take him. They led Kozlowski out in handcuffs. Claire watched him go. Watched a man who'd wielded power for 30 years reduced to just another criminal being processed through the system he'd corrupted. Moss turned to Claire. Ms. Donovan, you're free to go. The charges against you are being dropped. Agent Mercer's death has been reclassified as homicide committed by unknown assailants. We found evidence at the scene suggesting he was killed by someone on Kozlowski's payroll. What about Torres? Also released, she's being debriefed now. Moss pulled out a key, unlocked Claire's handcuffs. I owe you an apology. We should have caught this corruption years ago. The fact that it took a civilian to expose it is embarrassing for the Bureau. Claire rubbed her wrists where the cuffs had bitten in. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I was trying to stay alive. You did more than that. Walsh's confession has opened up leads we didn't even know existed. We're looking at another 40 potential arrests across military and federal agencies. This network goes deeper than anyone realized. Then keep digging. Don't let this get buried because it's politically inconvenient. Moss met her eyes. I won't. You have my word. Torres was waiting in the hallway, looking exhausted but relieved. She pulled Claire into a brief, fierce hug. You did it, Torres said. You actually did it. We did it, Claire corrected. They walked out of the building together into a gray dawn. News vans were already gathering outside the gates. Someone had leaked that something major was happening. Claire could see reporters setting up cameras, producers shouting into phones. You ready for this? Torres asked. No, but that's never stopped me before. Marcus was parked across the street in a borrowed truck. He got out when he saw them, relief flooding his face. Tell me we won, he said. We won, Claire confirmed. Kozlowski? Arrested, along with everyone who was protecting him. She looked at Marcus. How did you get the recording uploaded so fast? I didn't. I uploaded it 6 hours ago, right after you went into the detention center. Figured if things went sideways, I wanted insurance already in place. He grinned. The timer message was just to make them panic. You're smarter than you look. So I've been told. They went back to Marcus's cabin to regroup. Claire slept for 14 hours straight, her body finally allowing itself to shut down now that the immediate threat was gone. When she woke up, it was late afternoon and someone was cooking bacon. She found Torres and Marcus in the kitchen, watching news coverage on a laptop. You're famous again, Marcus said, not looking away from the screen. Claire poured herself coffee, looked at the broadcast. The anchor was describing the arrests. Kozlowski, 3 other FBI officials, 2 Pentagon contractors, a Marine colonel who'd been facilitating thefts from Camp Lejeune. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, and her photo was displayed in the corner of the screen, the same photo from the hospital after the stabbing, the one where she looked half dead but defiant. "They're calling you the most important whistleblower in federal law enforcement history," Torres said. "Congress is already scheduling hearings. The president mentioned the case in a press conference this morning." Claire sat down heavily. "I'm not a whistleblower. I'm a nurse who got stabbed and then refused to die quietly." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Torres said. The criminal trials took 8 months. Claire testified 11 times across 3 different jurisdictions. She sat in courtroom after courtroom, answering the same questions, reliving the same moments. Defense attorneys tried to tear her apart, accused her of seeking attention, of fabricating evidence, of being unreliable due to PTSD. But the evidence didn't lie. The recordings, the bank transfers, the testimony from Walsh and Carver and dozens of others who'd been part of the network. Gregory Walsh received 40 years in federal prison. Miranda Voss got 35. Kenneth Lim, who survived his gunshot wound, received 25. Vincent Carver, who'd cooperated from the beginning, got 12 years and witness protection. Frank Kozlowski's trial was the biggest. The media covered every day, dissecting every piece of evidence, every witness, every legal maneuver. His defense team was expensive and aggressive, but they couldn't overcome the facts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Kozlowski was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. His wife received 15 years for money laundering. 3 other FBI officials who'd helped him cover up investigations received sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. Claire watched the sentencing from the gallery. Kozlowski never looked at her. Not once. Even at the end, he couldn't acknowledge that a nurse from Ashbury had brought down his entire operation, but she'd learned something over the past months. She didn't need his acknowledgement, didn't need him to understand or accept what had happened. The facts spoke for themselves. Justice didn't require the guilty to agree they were guilty. It just required consequences. After the final sentencing, Claire walked out of the courthouse into a wall of reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust toward her face, everyone shouting questions at once. For 8 months, she'd declined every interview request. But today, standing on the courthouse steps with the sun breaking through clouds, she stopped. "Ms. Donovan, what do you want to say to people who are calling you a hero?" Claire looked at the reporter who'd asked. Rebecca Holt from the Washington Post, the same one who'd been trying to interview her since the beginning. "I'm not a hero," Claire said. "I'm someone who saw something wrong and couldn't walk away. That's not heroism. That's just basic human decency." "What would you say to others who witness corruption or crime?" another reporter asked. "Report it. Document it. Don't assume someone else will handle it. And don't give up when people tell you it's not your problem or it's too big to fight." Claire paused. "The system only works if people are willing to hold it accountable. All of us. Not just the people in uniforms or badges." "What's next for you?" Claire smiled slightly. "I'm going back to work." But she didn't go back to Northvale General. That chapter was closed. Instead, she accepted a position with the Veterans Crisis Response Initiative, a new program Torres had helped create, combining military medical expertise with civilian emergency services. Claire's role was to train first responders, hospital staff, and community organizations on how to recognize and assist veterans in crisis. The work was hard. The pay was terrible compared to what she could have made doing speaking tours or consulting, but it mattered in ways that felt real. She taught paramedics how to spot signs of combat trauma, showed nurses how to talk to veterans without triggering defensive responses, helped police departments develop protocols for interacting with former service members experiencing mental health emergencies. And slowly, case by case, she started to see the difference. Veterans getting help instead of getting arrested. Families understanding what their loved ones were going through. Communities building support networks instead of letting people fall through the cracks. 6 months after Kozlowski's sentencing, Claire received a call from the Secretary of Defense. He wanted her to testify before Congress about military supply chain reform. She almost said no. She'd had enough of Washington, enough of politics and bureaucracy, and people who talked about change without actually changing anything. But then she thought about Corporal Hale, about the Marine who'd nearly died because corrupt officials were more interested in profits than protecting the people who served. She said yes. The congressional hearing room was packed. Senators, representatives, military brass, media. Claire sat at the witness table in a simple suit, no makeup, no pretense. Senator Patricia Vance from the Armed Services Committee started the questioning. Ms. Donovan, you've become something of a symbol for accountability in military procurement, but some critics say you're just one person who got lucky, that the problems you exposed were isolated incidents, not systemic issues. How would you respond to that? Claire looked directly at the senator. I'd say those critics are either lying or they haven't been paying attention. The network we dismantled was operating for 15 years across multiple branches of service and federal agencies. That's not an isolated incident. That's institutional failure. Strong words, true words. The only reason this network lasted as long as it did is because people in positions of authority chose profit over duty. They chose personal gain over the lives of service members. And when people tried to report it, they were silenced, threatened, or killed. You're referring to the attempts on your life in Corporal Hales. I'm referring to a system that punished people for telling the truth and rewarded people for covering it up. That system is still in place. We arrested the people running one network, but until we change the incentives, until we make accountability more valuable than corruption, this will happen again. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Claire testified about everything: the stabbing, the investigation, the corruption, the attempts to silence her. She didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make it sound heroic or noble, just laid out the facts. When she finished, the committee chairman leaned forward. Ms. Donovan, on behalf of this committee and the American people, thank you for your service, both in uniform and as a civilian. Your courage has led to significant reforms in how we oversee military supply chains. Respectfully, sir, I don't want thanks. I want action. I want oversight that actually works. I want whistleblowers protected instead of prosecuted. I want systems that make it easier to report corruption than to hide it. Claire stood. That's the only thanks that matters. The video of her testimony went viral within hours. Not the whole 4 hours. The part where she told a room full of politicians that their thanks meant nothing without action. The comment section exploded. Half the country called her a patriot. The other half called her ungrateful and disrespectful. Claire didn't read either side. She was done caring what strangers on the internet thought. But one comment reached her anyway. Someone had posted a photo of Marcus Hale standing in formation, fully recovered, back on active duty. The caption read, "This Marine is alive because one nurse refused to quit. That's all the thanks she needs." Marcus called her that night. "Did you see the photo?" "I saw it." "My CO wants to put you in for a civilian commendation. Recognition from the Marine Corps for saving one of ours. Tell him I appreciate it, but no. I didn't save you for a commendation. I know, but let me say it anyway. Thank you. For everything." Claire's voice caught. "You would have done the same." "Maybe, but you did it first." 3 months later, on a cold November morning, Claire returned to Northvale General for the first time since her suspension. Not as a nurse, as a guest speaker for their new crisis response training program. Margaret was there, looking uncomfortable. The hospital administrator Peterson was there, suddenly friendly now that Claire had national recognition. Half the nursing staff she'd worked with for 5 years was there, most looking genuinely happy to see her. Claire stood at the front of the conference room and looked at the faces staring back. "A year ago I worked here," she began. "I was just another nurse on the floor, nobody special, nobody important. Then I helped someone, and it nearly got me killed. When I came back here after that, after being stabbed 7 times defending a Marine, this hospital put me on suspension. They decided I was a liability." The room was dead silent. "I'm not telling you this to shame anyone. I'm telling you because it matters. Because systems don't just fail at the top. They fail at every level when people choose fear over action, when they choose liability over doing what's right." Claire paused. "I'm here to train you to do better, not just with veteran patients, with everyone. Every person who comes through those doors deserves someone who won't walk away when things get hard." She spent the next 3 hours teaching them combat triage, de-escalation techniques, how to maintain composure under pressure. The nurses were attentive, asking questions, taking notes. When the session ended, Margaret approached her. "Claire, I'm sorry. For what happened? For not fighting harder to keep you? Claire looked at her former supervisor. I'm not. What? If you'd fought harder, if the board had kept me, I'd still be here running codes and working double shifts. I never would have exposed the trafficking network. Kozlowski would still be protecting Walsh. Marines would still be dying. Claire picked up her bag. Sometimes getting pushed out of something is the only way to find what you were actually meant to do. Margaret had no response to that. Claire left Northvale General for the last time and drove to the cemetery where her father was buried. She hadn't visited in almost 2 years, too busy with work, with life, with all the excuses people make. She sat on the grass next to his headstone and told him everything. The stabbing, the investigation, the trials, the testimony, all of it. I think I get it now, she said to the engraved name. Why you ran into burning buildings. Why you couldn't just walk away when someone needed help. It's not about being brave. It's about not being able to live with yourself if you don't try. A cold wind blew through the cemetery. Claire pulled her jacket tighter. I'm okay, Dad. Took a while, but I'm okay. She stayed for another hour, then drove back to Brook Hollow. Murphy greeted her with his usual indifference, demanding dinner despite having been fed 3 hours earlier. Claire's phone buzzed. Email from Torres. Drinks tomorrow? I have news. They met at a quiet bar downtown. Torres looked better than she had in months. The dark circles were gone. The tension in her shoulders eased. I'm being promoted, Torres said, raising her glass. Captain, and I'm being assigned to head a new task force investigating military contractor corruption. Full authorization, multi-agency cooperation, direct reporting to the Secretary of the Navy. That's incredible. It only exists because of what you started. The reforms, the oversight, the accountability measures, they're all downstream from you refusing to let this go. Torres took a drink. I want you on the team, official consultant position, better pay than the crisis response work, access to resources and authority. Claire swirled her own drink, thinking. Can I say no to the cases that don't interest me? Within reason. Can I still do the training work? We'd build your schedule around it. Then yes. But I have conditions. No media appearances unless absolutely necessary. No political games. And if I say something's wrong, you actually listen. Torres smiled. Done. They shook on it. Outside the bar, snow was starting to fall. The first of the season. Claire stood on the sidewalk watching it come down, feeling the cold on her face. A year ago, she'd been lying on a different sidewalk, bleeding, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake, wondering if saving one Marine was worth dying for. Now she knew the answer. It wasn't about worth. It wasn't about calculations or risk assessment or logical decision-making. It was about the kind of person you chose to be when nobody was watching and nothing was certain. She'd chosen to hold the line. And because of that choice, 47 criminals were in prison. Dozens of investigations were ongoing. Reforms were being implemented. Marines were alive who might have died. But more than that, she'd chosen to be someone who didn't quit when things got hard, who didn't walk away when it would have been easier, who believed that one person could make a difference even when everyone said it was impossible. And she'd been right. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then decided why not. Ms. Donovan? Speaking. My name is Sergeant Laura Reyes. I'm stationed at Fort Hood. I've been following your story, and I need to report something. Weapons inventory irregularities. My command is telling me it's just paperwork errors, but I think it's more. I don't know who to trust. Claire felt something shift in her chest, the familiar weight settling back onto her shoulders. Another person in trouble, another network to expose, another fight. She could say no, could give the Sergeant Torres's number and let someone else handle it. Instead, she said, tell me everything. Because some people are called to serve once. Some people serve and then move on with their lives, content with what they've contributed. And some people can't stop serving even when their official duty is done. They see someone in trouble and step forward. They hear injustice and speak up. They witness corruption and refuse to be silent. Claire Donovan had been a soldier, had been a nurse, had been a witness, had been a whistleblower. Now she was something else entirely. Something harder to define but easier to recognize. She was the person who held the line when everyone else walked away. She was the one who wouldn't quit. And in a world that often rewarded looking the other way, that made her dangerous to people who thought they were untouchable. and invaluable to people who'd been told their voices didn't matter. The snow fell harder. Claire walked to her car, phone still to her ear, listening to Sergeant Reyes describe what she'd seen. Somewhere across the city, criminals were sleeping easy, thinking they were safe. They had no idea what was coming. And that was exactly how Claire wanted it, because the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the people nobody pays attention to, those are the ones who change everything. They thought she was nobody. They were wrong.